Arsenal win their appeal against Myles Lewis-Skelly's red card, and Evan Ferguson could be on the move. Would he be a good option for Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal? We'll get into all of that and much, much more on this bonus episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Hey everybody, how are we? Welcome back to another edition of the pod, a bonus edition of the pod, coming to you live on this Tuesday evening, shortly after the news was broken that Arsenal have won their appeal against Myles Lewis-Skelly's sending off at the weekend. Now, is it good news? Of course, because it means that Myles Lewis-Skelly will now not face that 3-match ban that he was staring down the barrel of. It still doesn't change the fact that we had to play half of a game pretty much with 10 men, which is not ideal. And when your squad is already on its knees and people are having to work that extra bit harder to compensate for the fact that they're down a player, it's certainly a huge frustration, at least for me anyway. And I'm sure many, many others. But listen, the decision has been made. The right decision has been made. I just find it mad that an independent regulatory commission have had to get out of bed, make their way down to wherever it is they meet, if it's not done virtually. But for the purpose of my story sounding really good, let's say that they all meet in person in suits in some grand old hall or something. I don't know. But anyway, the fact that 3 people or however many people it was on this independent regulatory commission have had to actually get out of bed to tell everybody what we all knew to be the case from the weekend is quite frankly embarrassing, isn't it? And it's really, really embarrassing for the PGMOL because they doubled down on this. You know, they were adamant that the decision was right. They talked about serious foul play. They came out with all these different lines to try and justify what was clearly a stinker of a decision, a rotten decision from Michael Oliver. And now they've been made to look silly by the FA's Independent Regulatory Commission, who have stepped in after Arsenal formally launched an appeal to say, you know what, lads, you got a case, you got a point. And I've been speaking with some mates on WhatsApp about this, and mates that aren't Arsenal fans, by the way. And they keep saying to me, like, you know, why are you still going on about it? Like, why have you been talking about this since Saturday? It's Tuesday now. Give it a rest. Well, I think the fact that this commission have come out and said that we were right and they were wrong actually vindicates the large-scale reaction that we've seen to this. Now, it doesn't vindicate or justify people being abusive, and we've talked about that on recent episodes. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again, but to make it clear for those that maybe haven't listened to recent episodes, I do not agree with the abuse of Michael Oliver or his family. That is wrong. It is disgusting. It shouldn't happen. But there's plenty of good people who have simply expressed their frustration and disappointment at what was obviously a really poor decision, who have had their names dragged through the mud. I put a post out earlier today and I stick by this. I said, I've got a massive problem with some of the reporting around the Michael Oliver stuff these past few days. Smart, educated people with huge platforms are willing to label all Arsenal fans as the kind of people who would make death threats to a man and his family. There are unfortunately idiots everywhere. And if wider events in this country over the past few years haven't taught you that, where the hell have you been? We're not all the same, and the actions of a minority do not represent the majority of us. But hey, whatever gets the clicks, I suppose. You know, you've seen people from major newspapers with major platforms, major size followings, talking absolute drivel about all of this. We've all said that the abuse is wrong, but criticism isn't abuse. As Jason points out in the chat, the PGMOL have been made to look stupid here. There's no two ways about it. They doubled down on the decision. They then put out the statement about the abuse, which, look, they're entitled to do. But as we've discussed already, I think a lot of people took that as the PGMOL trying to create a bit of a diversion and a bit of a distraction. And now they've seen their decision essentially be put in the bin by this independent regulatory commission. And as I say, now they've got egg on their faces. I wonder if we're going to get a PGMOL statement tonight or tomorrow or in the days to follow. I wonder if we're going to get a special episode of Mic'd Up. That's what I'm really excited about. Are they going to bring us a bonus episode of Mic'd Up just to talk to us about that ridiculous decision that we saw at the weekend? So look, really, really good news. Really, really good news for Arsenal, of course, because the squad is pretty thin at the minute. And to have Myles Lewis-Skelly, who's proven himself a very, very capable young man, is obviously, of great importance to us. And having him available is a massive boost. So I'm pleased about that. And there were some big games on the horizon that he was due to miss. Obviously, the Manchester City one coming up at the weekend was the first one. I don't know if he'll start that game or if Ricardo Calafiori will, but either way, it's nice to have that option and to be able to call on him from the bench if indeed he doesn't make the starting 11. But yeah, this is look, I don't want to say it's one of those things where it's like, I told you so, but we did all tell you so. And Arsenal fans all over the globe were super vocal about this. But when you know that you've got a case, when you really know that you've got a case, is when you sort of look around the wider footballing world, and the majority of pundits, even people who in the past, I would say, have been very anti-Arsenal and have been very critical of the way that Arsenal operate under Mikel Arteta and some of the things that we've been involved in since he took charge, when they're sitting there going, hold on a minute, this is wrong. This is bang out of order. This is completely and utterly embarrassing on Michael Oliver's part and the VAR's part, and then on the PGMOL's part, who decided to double down on the decision. You know you've got a case. And, people keep saying, well, there isn't a conspiracy theory and Arsenal fans need to be quiet. And I agree. It's probably not a conspiracy against Arsenal, but there's certainly something. It might even be just subconscious that is at play here when people are refereeing us, because it feels like we are being, we are being targeted. We are being refereed in a different way to other people. I'm not going to go as far as calling it a conspiracy theory, because I think that's giving them too much credit. They ain't that smart based on what we can see. What we've got a group of referees who have been influenced by a media narrative that's been created around Arsenal, whereby we're talked about as dark arts merchants and all the rest of it. That now means that when referees go into our games, they are more vigilant than they would be normally. And so they're picking up small things that they wouldn't pick up normally, that they would allow to go by the wayside in other games, because they're going into Arsenal matches wired up to look for the dark arts that everybody keeps talking about. So the media are to blame for this as well. This narrative has been ongoing for a little while, and it's no coincidence that since all of that started, the refereeing in games that we've been involved in has been very, very different, has been a lot stricter. And it feels like when it comes to Arsenal, the letter of the law is applied exactly. And when it comes to everybody else, it's a guideline that referees use, and there's a bit of common sense applied. Ollie Holt of the Mail put a post out earlier on. Hold on. And I'll share this one. I've seen a few really questionable ones from some journalists. Let's have a look at this one from Ollie Holt. Hold on a second. Where am I? Why can't you see me? There we go. He says, no conspiracy, no corruption. Lewis-Skelly's tackle was cynical and dangerous and late and high. Showing a red, hardly an outlandish decision. But in today's football culture, Michael Oliver has to be given police protection at home for sending him off. Okay, so first of all, the independent commission, the FA's independent regulatory commission, disagree about the dangerous, late and high bit. It was clearly someone who tried to trip somebody over and caught him a little bit further up the leg than he would have liked. But it's not reckless. It's not endangering an opponent. There's not excessive force or brutality or any of the other buzzwords that you see in the law, or trigger words, if you like, that are in the law that the referees look through and probably go, well, does it meet this criteria? No, it doesn't meet the criteria for a red card, Oliver Holt. And that has been upheld by the FA's independent regulatory commission. Also, on the point of the abuse, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, right? Because I've already made my case on this and made my point, which is that this is abhorrent. It's disgusting. We don't want to see it. Okay. Nobody for a second is condoning it or justifying it. But it is interesting to me that, having looked through some of the articles that have been shared online and having looked back a little bit myself earlier today, it's interesting that there were death threats made to a referee. I don't know if it was Michael Oliver, it might have been, or it might have been someone else, after a Liverpool-Manchester United game where there was talk of a car bomb. And that is obviously completely bang out of order. And there's no place for that whatsoever. And I hope they caught whoever come up with that nonsense and whoever made that threat. But I don't remember there being hit pieces on Liverpool or Manchester United fans, because I don't remember which way round it was and what the issue even was. Like, I've read the article, which was obviously timed after that clash between those two sides. But the point I'm trying to make here, guys, is that I don't remember there being that many hit pieces on either of those two fan bases after Michael Oliver received a very, very serious threat. And I'm not saying he wasn't threatened this time. I'm not saying that he hasn't had police protecting his home, because I couldn't say that because I don't know. What I am saying is stop trying to paint every Arsenal fan with this brush of being an abusive and violent and threatening so-and-so that is willing to harm a person and his family for the decisions that he made on a football pitch. We're all annoyed about the decision because we all love our team. We're all annoyed about the decision because we love our sport. And decisions like that, which are clearly and obviously wrong, are impacting the outcome of games, are impacting results. We've seen that many, many times this season. And we don't want our game to descend into chaos. And so, as Arsenal fans, as football fans, first and foremost, if we come out and say that's an outrageous decision and that's wrong, that doesn't then translate to us being abusive, violent, and people that will turn up at Michael Oliver's house. No, stop painting us all with that brush. We're not that. That is not us. That's a couple of idiots online. There are idiots everywhere. And as I said earlier on in this bonus episode of the pod, which I thank you for listening to, by the way, as I said earlier on, the actions of a couple of idiots on do not align with our feelings, do not align with the wider fan base's feelings. That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. And if you haven't realized over the last couple of years, in particular in this country, and I can't speak for other countries because I don't live there, that there are idiots everywhere you turn, then I don't know where you've been living. People have become so vile in their manner, and social media has given people a platform to do that. And whilst I think social media is great, and it's given me so much over the years, and I'm so thankful for what it's given me, but it's also got its downsides. And its downsides are, and I've said this many times on the pod before, but I'll say it one more time for those in the back, it's given people a platform where they think they can say stuff that would get them a punch in the face in the real world. And that is not on. That is not on. Anyway, let's move on. Myles Lewis-Skelly now available to play in Arsenal's next 3 games, which is great news. An embarrassing moment for the PGMOL, a victory for Arsenal in terms of having that decision overturned. And I think people will say that Arsenal fans and the media and all the rest of it applied a lot of pressure, and maybe they'll question whether they were right to apply that level of pressure. Well, that level of pressure, I think, has played a part in this decision. I think it was cut and dry anyway. I don't think it needed necessarily outside noise or influence for a group of right-minded people to sit in a room and look at that and go, nope, that was a joke of a decision. We could all see it straight away. But maybe, just maybe, the pressure has played a little bit of a part. Now, I'm not saying that you should apply this level of pressure and that it should spill into abuse each and every time you disagree with the referee's decision. But we have objective decisions that the sensible ones among us can look at and dispute and argue and debate. But also we know deep down that there is kind of half a dozen and six of one and half a dozen of the other in some of those situations, and you have to accept sometimes they won't go for you. But this was obviously wrong. This was obviously ridiculous. This was obviously pathetic. And the fact that it then didn't get picked up by the VAR afterwards, I think, compounded the frustration, made it even worse. And so I hold the VAR, who I think was Darren England on the day, just as responsible, and his assistant VAR, whose name I don't know. But I hold them all three equally responsible for that shambles of a decision. They've all been left with egg on their faces now because the FA have stepped in and basically made it clear that the PGMOL, have embarrassed themselves. And that's what I like to see. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk transfers on this Tuesday night. Lots of you in the live chat with us at the moment, which is great to see. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you're watching us on YouTube at the moment, and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, as well as we continue on our journey towards our next milestone. If you're watching us live on X right now, and I can see there are hundreds upon hundreds of you with us on X right now, thank you for being with us. Give it a like, share it, whatever. Follow the podcast page at TCOAG pod. And I'd urge you to come over to the YouTube channel or subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. That way you'll never miss an episode. We've been streaming a fair few live on X lately, and we will do that for a little bit longer, but we're not going to bring you every single episode on the X platform. So if you fancy becoming part of the Chronicles of a Gooner family, supporting me to bring you more content, I'd really appreciate it. Come over to one of the other platforms, either a podcast platform or our YouTube channel. Just a quick reminder as well that tomorrow night, Wednesday night, I'm recording this on Tuesday night, so around about 24 hours from now at 7:45 p.m., we are going to go live on the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel for a full watch along of the game against Girona. We'll bring you a loose commentary of the game, something a little bit different to what you'd normally find on YouTube. But on top of that, we'll keep you across all the other scores because it's the final night of the league phase. There's going to be lots of twists and turns. I'm sure we'll keep you up to date with the live table whilst our focus is on the Arsenal game as well. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Haven't done one of these in an age. I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. So yeah, if you fancy it, if you're looking for some company to watch the game with, I'd love to have you with me on the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel. Right then, let's do that transfer talk that I promised you. I've digressed there a little bit, haven't I? Okay, so one story that caught my eye a little bit earlier on today was the one regarding Evan Ferguson. Now, he's a player that it feels like has been long linked with a move to Arsenal. If you go back a couple of years when he sort of really burst onto the scene, Evan Ferguson, there was a lot of talk about him maybe being the centre forward that Arsenal really need, the one that the Gunners are missing. And I remember at the time thinking, you know what? He looks pretty good. And this guy looks like he's got a lot of potential. You factor in that he was found by Brighton, a club who are renowned for finding gems, and he was brought over from Ireland to play for them, and he had this really hot streak and spell at Brighton and Hove Albion. I want to go back because I don't think it was last season. I think it was the season before. Was it the 22-23 season? I'm just checking the statistics. 22-23. Or was it 21-22? Hold on a second. Let me just figure this out. All right, it wasn't 21-22. I think it was 22-23. I'm just bringing up the statistics. Bear with me a second. I should have done this before, but obviously I'm not that organized. Well, look, 23-24, he got 6 Premier League goals. 22-23, he got 6 Premier League goals in 19 appearances. And he went on this really hot streak around December of the 22-23 season, where he scored against Arsenal, scored away at Everton, got an assist in that same game, then got an assist at home to Liverpool, and then scored a goal against Leicester. So there was 5-game streak where he was on real fire. He scored 2 goals in a game against Southampton, 3 games from the end of that season. And there was a lot of excitement around Evan Ferguson and what he might develop into. At the time, I remember the talk being £100 million. It was like £100 million or Brighton will never consider selling him. And I remember thinking at that time, that's a bit steep. That is a bit steep. That is, in fact, that's ridiculous. And as I look at his transfer mark profile right now, you can quite clearly see that his stock took a massive rise around about October 2023, where his value, according to them, went from an original £1 million when he joined Brighton and Hove Albion in November 22 to just 11 months later in October 2023, 65. So it was clear that his stock had risen dramatically. It was clear that he was going to be a target for a lot of clubs. But since then, it's dropped off, hasn't it? His performances have dropped off. He's not had many chances. He's had some injuries as well, I'm pretty sure. And the stock of Evan Ferguson is just, quite frankly, not where it was. And I don't really know, too much about Brighton and Hove Albion, not to the point where I can sit there and explain to you all the nuances of why he wasn't getting the game time, of why his stock appears to have fallen, and of why, all of a sudden we're talking about a bit of a risk. Whereas if you'd have told me that we were going to sign him 2.5 years ago, I would have said, no, it's a sure thing. Go get it done. But I just wonder now if Evan Ferguson becomes an option for Arsenal, because the Gunners are clearly in the market for a striker. They've clearly had an admiration for him in the past. Have they been completely put off by what we've seen in the last season and a half with Evan Ferguson? If you look at him this season, just 12 appearances. He's only been in the starting 11 9% of the time. He's only played 11% of Brighton's total minutes. 12 appearances in the league, just the one goal. It's not exactly inspiring. He missed the first 3 games of the season through injury, and he's missed the last 6 through injury as well. But all the time in between was pretty underwhelming. Getting 5 minutes in games, 4 minutes in games, 2 minutes in a game, 9, 8, 5. Clearly not first choice, clearly not seen as being good enough for a Brighton and Hove Albion starter at the moment. But I just wonder if that interest lives on. And if it does, would Arsenal see this as an opportunity to try and get him in the door? Now, initially, there was talk about Evan Ferguson moving to Arsenal on loan. And we talked about it in Tuesday morning's episode. And we said, look, you can talk about loan deals all you want, but at the moment, we've got Raheem Sterling and we've got Neto. So in order for us to facilitate a loan deal, we would have to let one of those guys go. And I said to you guys that I thought it very unlikely that Arsenal would do that. I thought it very unlikely that Arsenal would send one of those players back. I don't even know if they can send those players back based on the contracts that are there. So I then think about Evan Ferguson. And the reason I brought this up today is because we've heard tonight, or a few hours ago, this afternoon, I should say, Tuesday afternoon, 28th of January, that actually Brighton would be open to letting them move on a permanent deal. And so that got me thinking, okay, well, we can't take him on loan, but he is a player we've been interested in the past. And we were probably quoted, if we got as far as making an inquiry, something north of £100 million. And here we are in a place where Brighton are probably desperate to get rid now, where the player probably desperately wants to move because it feels like it's the end of the road for him at the Amex Stadium. And I just wonder if sort of 25, 30 million might do it. And if it does, would that be a gamble and a risk worth taking? Because there's definitely something in there with Evan Ferguson. There's obviously been a drop-off, but there's definitely something in there when you look at how he broke into the side and what everybody was saying about him at that point. So I just wonder if it's something that might be considered if the price is right. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Matthias Tell is another player that is being talked about this evening, because there was a report that dropped a little bit earlier on. I'm just going to try and find it. Hold on. Just to be clear, by the way, before you all start getting onto me in the live chat box, I'm not saying I would sign Evan Ferguson. I'm just saying, given the historic interest, given the fact that he is likely to be on the move and that Brighton are open to doing a permanent deal, which is the only way we could do it given our current circumstances, maybe it's something they'll consider. Matthias Tell, so the Bayern player, has decided to leave Bayern in January. According to Fabrizio Romano, Chelsea asked for him at the beginning of January, but there are more clubs also keen. The race is open. Could that be one that Arsenal are about to enter into? He's a left winger, just 19 years old. No goals yet in the Bundesliga this season. He's only made 8 appearances, very, very young. But I think everybody who's ever watched him play understands that this guy is a real big talent. Bayern brought him in from Stade Rennais back in 2021, and he's been there, back in 2022, and he's been there ever since. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. Just one to keep your eye on as well. Let's see what you guys are saying. Die Hard Gunner says, I love it when people come at me like this. Hold on, here we go. Harry, as an Arsenal mouthpiece, why is the club not buying Victor Osimhen? He has a release clause and is scoring for fun. Proven winner, big, physical, and dangerous. What is the problem? What's Victor Osimhen's release clause? What is it? Tell me. Because you've got this all figured out. So please enlighten me as to how much Victor Osimhen's release clause is. I'd like to know. Rai, the Italian state broadcaster, when they last reported a release clause for him, it was back in September 2024, and they put it at 90 million euros. 90 million euros is a lot of money, mate. So this idea that you can just click your fingers and do a deal at 90 million euros is a little bit far-fetched. Also, Victor Osimhen's dropped off. Let's not pretend he hasn't. Like, he's been playing his football at Galatasaray, with all due respect to them. Let's not pretend that Victor Osimhen is the same Victor Osimhen that won the Scudetto with Napoli. If you're worried about injuries as well, Victor Osimhen ain't got the greatest record. Die Hard Gunner then goes on to say, stop making stuff up, Harry. This is nonsense. We don't want Ferguson. We want Victor Osimhen. You, sir, want Victor Osimhen. I wouldn't mind Victor Osimhen, right? But I just don't know of any rumor. I don't know of any connection between him and Arsenal Football Club. So why am I going to sit here and tell you that there is? Why the hell am I going to sit there and tell you that there is? And apparently I'm lying. Incredible. I'm lying, yes. I wonder what, you know what? Let me, hold on a second. Let me just, because I'm Arsenal's mouthpiece, let me give him a quick call. Let me just mute my microphone. I'm going to give him a quick call. And if they give me permission, I'll tell you that we're going to sign Victor Osimhen. Will that make you feel better and sleep well tonight? Jeez, man. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. Tom says, depending on the price, Tell could be a shrewd move. I like the idea of Matthias Tell, because what I've seen of him, I've been really, really impressed by. But it doesn't fit in necessarily. And I'm not saying that, we have to take this as gospel, but obviously the Athletic reported on Tuesday morning that Arsenal were focused on a central striker more so than a wide player. Matthias Tell falls into the latter. He's definitely a wide player. It might be a market opportunity that the Gunners decide is worth pivoting to. I'm not disputing that. And as I say, I like the player, but it doesn't kind of align really with what we're being told or what we're reading. So I'm a little bit reluctant to get carried away. But if we could get Tell in, I'd be all for it, because I think he's a really good player and a really top talent with a really high ceiling. Lynn Simpson says, in my humble opinion, I don't think a striker will come in. I've been pretty confident over the last few days that one will, but as each day passes and we've not heard anything about it, I have to say my faith is dwindling a little bit. It is. I'm not going to lie. And to be clear, I'm not saying that Evan Ferguson is the solution, by the way. I just wanted to discuss that and put that one out there because of the developments with regards to his future today that we've clearly seen. So I don't think he's the answer. I said a few weeks ago, I don't think he's the answer when we were initially linked, and that's not really changed in my head. I just wonder if, because of Arsenal's historic interest in him, at least historic interest that we're led to believe was there, will they see it as an opportunity? Will they see it as a chance, I guess, to do something? This is incredible. Die Hard Gunner. Harry's job is to control the narrative. Why is he putting things out there? You guys are sheep. There are so many people with much bigger platforms and much louder voices than mine. If you were Arsenal Football Club, why would you get the cheap option to be your mouthpiece, is what I'd say to that. But anyway, Lalieta Lalietia Aria, sorry for getting that wrong, says, any chances for Sesko still? As far as I'm aware, that looks dead. It would be nice if we could get him. He's definitely a long-term target, but it feels like at the minute it's out of reach as far as this January window is concerned. Oslo Gunas says, has the Cunha links gone cold? They seem to have, at least from what I'm reading. Again, I don't claim to be in the know, but I'm certainly not getting Matthias Cunha coming up on my feed anywhere near as much anymore. I'm not seeing as many articles, and I'm not really seeing that one be pushed too much. So we always worried about that one, didn't we? That the sort of fee would be a stumbling point, and that would put Arsenal off. We wondered if Arsenal would try and lowball a little bit in the hope that Matthias Cunha would then start pushing. And I understand a lot of people got excited when the Wolves boss came out and was criticizing his body language as if to say he doesn't want to be here anymore. But that hasn't developed into anything. It might still do in the coming days and in what remains of the transfer window. But as far as I know at the minute, I don't think there's anything in that. Going to take a couple more of your questions. But before I do that, if I could just ask you guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, remember to leave us a like, guys. It really, really, really does help. And subscribe to the channel as well if you're new. That really helps as well. If you're listening to us on any of the podcast platforms, please leave us a review. Make sure you're subscribed. That also helps. And if you're watching us on X, which over 1,000 of you are right now, which is amazing, come over to our YouTube channel. Just search the Chronicles of Aguna. Come over to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Again, search the Chronicles of Aguna and give us a subscribe and become part of the Chronicles of Aguna family. Right, let's take this one from G. Thor in the chat, who says, some rumors that we might activate Nico Williams' release clause. Any truth in that? I've seen those rumors as well tonight. Just sort of scrolling through before I hit the live button this evening. Apologies for the disconnection there. Not sure what happened. But just sort of scrolling through social media, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have been doing this evening, I have seen rumors of a potential activation of Nico Williams' release clause. But we heard so much to the contrary earlier in the window, didn't we? That we were worried about his wages, that, you know, we might not be able to trigger the release clause because we'd have to deposit all of that money in one go, etc., etc. So the truth is, I don't know. I don't know. Mr. Mute says, do you think Kivior will leave in this window? Each window we hear about him going back to Italy, but it's gone dead recently. I personally think he stays put at least until the summer, but I do think come the summer, he's probably one that will feel himself that he needs to move on. Paul James says, why did the PGMOL force Arsenal to appeal? They could have rescinded the red card. Also, will Arteta go strong tomorrow? So why did the PGMOL force Arsenal to appeal? Because they were protecting their own. And trying desperately to defend what was clearly a wrong decision. That's how I see it anyway. They could have rescinded the red card. You're absolutely right, and saved themselves the embarrassment of the FA having to step in. But hey, they didn't want to do that either. They just they felt that doubling down was the best way to go. And also, will Arteta go strong tomorrow? I think he'll make a few changes. I think he'll make a handful of changes because I think it's what our current situation demands. But I see Girona away as a tricky game. And I know that we're probably going to go through comfortably anyway. But if, you know, I read basically after the last game that there was like a really tiny chance that we could somehow crash out of the top 8, but it was almost improbable, right? So I'm not worried about progression, but from what I know of this new format, and it is a format that I, like you guys, am still trying to figure out and still trying to work out, it is very beneficial to finish higher up. So there'll be that sort of battle in Mikel Arteta's own mind, won't there, where he's kind of like, well, do I go really strong and risk not being at 100% for Manchester City to finish a couple of positions higher up, or do I make a few changes, weaken the team ever so slightly, but like sort of accept the risk of maybe falling a little bit further down the Champions League phase in order to have a fresh team? It's a tough decision for the manager to make. If he had a fully fit squad, then it's not an issue. You can make the changes without without worrying about it too much. But we're not really in that position. I think we do weaken the side if we if we make changes. And I don't know what that looks like and how that impacts us at the end, I guess. The ballot Guna says, I'm sorry, Harry, but I don't think we're in a position to sign players on the basis of there's definitely something in there. And that's in reference to my comments about Evan Ferguson. I've said it probably 3 times since we moved on from that section. I don't personally think Evan Ferguson is the answer. But because of that historic interest, I just wonder if Arsenal might revisit it now that the circumstances are very, very different. But, whether we agree with that or not and that approach, and I certainly think we need someone who can impact the team straight away. That's what all the reporting is saying, that Mikel Arteta is in the market for someone who can impact the team straight away. It's not wild to think that Arsenal might roll the dice on someone because they've done it before. Mikel Arteta's done it before. So, yeah, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But I agree with you that we shouldn't be prioritizing a player on that basis. But it feels like with the window edging closer to the end, there's a week left, less than a week now. It feels like we're kind of in desperate street now, and we might have to do something that maybe wasn't necessarily on the cards not so long ago. I don't know. Goon Gang says, shout out from the Virginia Beach Gooners, Harry. Shout out to all of you guys. Hope you're all well. Thank you for tuning in. He says, I was praying for Marmoush. I think we missed the gem. I didn't watch the Man City game in full at the weekend because I was away, but in the highlights, he looked lively, didn't he? Omar Marmoush. And I've heard some raving reviews of him over the last sort of 6 months or so now. So I can understand why a lot of Arsenal fans were keen to see him come in. Right, I'm off to have a nice glass of wine and celebrate the fact that the PGMOL have been left with egg on their faces, courtesy of the FA's independent regulatory panel or commission. I think commission is the right word. Thank you to them for applying some common sense. Thank you to you all for tuning in on this episode. I really, really appreciate it. It's an extra episode, a bonus episode for you guys. We will be back tomorrow, which is Wednesday. At some point, you might be listening to this on Wednesday, which is fine. There'll be another episode in your feed in a little while. We will be looking ahead to that Girona game. We will be discussing whatever news crops up over the course of the day, and we'll be bringing you that live watch along on the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel of Arsenal versus Girona versus Arsenal. Let's get it correct in the UEFA Champions League. So really looking forward to that as well. I'll see you all then. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great evening or morning or afternoon, depending on when you're watching or listening to this back. All the best. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.